Hi, Bradley. This is your instructor, Jason, just kind of reaching out to you here about your post in week 4. So I am kind of doing a video review of the post and response just because this is the climate change discussion, and I think that this is one of the more important ones. And really, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to climate change. In some of my responses to other students, I've talked about the fact that climate change really is touching on a lot of the other areas of environmental policy that we've dealt with in this class, but that here in the United States we don't really have our own federal climate change policy, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that globally, we have to make treaties because every other country in the world is also affected by climate change. So, to varying degrees, some countries are willing to curb economic growth in order to mitigate climate change, but not everybody wants to play by the same rules. So it's kind of a difficult thing. So here I'm looking at your post, and you had to look at the NASA climate change research, and the NASA research is somewhat compelling just because of the scientific data and the legitimacy of NASA. So, glacial retreat is certainly a hot topic, and that contributes to sea level rise, and it also has a little bit to do with biodiversity, right? Like I said, climate change has a tendency to touch on, quite a few different areas, different policy areas in this course. And so you talk about ocean acidification, and of course that also contributes to some issues with biodiversity, especially in places like Australia and coral reefs where coral is dying off because of the increased acidity of the ocean. And that's something that happens as the oceans absorb more carbon. Global temperature rise, it seems to be on everybody's mind nowadays, especially since here we are in December, and like my colleagues in Iowa, where we have an online campus, are basically wondering where the snow is, and not all the leaves have fallen off the trees yet. So, I mean, the temperatures are rising. They seem to be rising more dramatically, as you mentioned. But what are the effects? Is that really causing these extreme events? Is the temperature rise fueling more powerful hurricanes and tornadoes and everything else? So, we have all of this data, and now the real question is, what are we supposed to do about it? So the second part of this discussion was to look at the partnerships for a better climate and discuss mitigation, adaptation, and sustainable development. So what these are the choices that we have, and this is that document. So basically, they make some recommendations towards the end of it. There's 10 recommendations, and all of these have something to do with mitigation, which is really the strategy that everybody talks about right now. People are starting to start talking about adaptation, and sustainable development is definitely on the minds of people, but I'm not sure that we're really all the way there yet because people aren't really aware of what that means. But one strategy to reduce mitigation, or one strategy to increase the mitigation, is to raise the ambition to reduce international aviation and maritime emissions. And I would even throw in there transportation. I mean, here's the electric car service, Car2Go. But transportation in all of its forms: rail, shipping, air travel, automobile travel. All of that stuff, we should have incentives to reduce the amount of emissions from those types of vehicles as a mitigation strategy. And up until now, we haven't really paid all that much attention to mitigating everything. Like automobiles certainly have been targeted as EPA. The EPA has put together new fuel standards. And all right, well, that's fair enough. I mean, because that's really like one of the easiest things to see. I'm not really sure this will work here, but I don't know if you can see the freeways here right outside of Ashford headquarters here in San Diego, but there's our lovely freeway heading heading south towards downtown, and it's just jammed up pretty much all the way up the line. So, that's really visible for people, and we all drive cars and know that that contributes to climate change. But what about increased standards for rail and shipping and, aviation and things like that? Those might be good mitigation strategies as well. And how can the federal government step in to mandate increased standards? So that's one good mitigation policy. Of course, adaptation means we're just going to have to deal with it. And, sustainable development is basically planning to ensure that we don't use up the resources that we have in an unsustainable way as we continue to grow in the future. So those are my thoughts. That's about it for your post. If you have any questions, be sure to post them here in the discussion. Thanks.